Northern California. I also want to acknowledge Governor Gavin Newsom and his incredible work in making crystal clear that the status quo isn't working and that what we can't have is a PG&E that comes out of bankruptcy with business as usual. That just doesn't work. This legislation specifically requires the commencement of a process to purchase PG&E. The State Power Authority, with leadership appointed by the governor, will oversee the transition. The new publicly owned utility will be called the Northern California Energy Utility District, with a public benefit corporation managing day-to-day operations. Critical to San Francisco and other communities, including local governments and federally recognized Native American tribes, will be able at the time of transition to purchase assets to form their own municipal utility, which San Francisco is already seeking to do. To be clear, this legislation will not in any way affect existing rights of cities such as San Francisco to attempt to create their own municipal utility. This legislation is long overdue. It will improve the quality of life of Californians, and it will lead to safer, more reliable, and affordable energy. And just to be blunt, it will put an end to the dangerous roller coaster ride that we have been on with PG&E over the past decade. PG&E is a failed company. What was always true has become increasingly clear. PG&E's business model is broken. PG&E focuses so extensively on pleasing Wall Street and creating returns and dividends for shareholders that it has allowed its infrastructure to deteriorate. Making matters worse, PG&E has a huge financial incentive under its current investor-owned utility structure to build endless additional miles of power lines, even into high-risk wildfire areas, because that's how it makes money. These endless expansions make it even harder for PG&E to maintain its lines. The tragic result, as we know, is that PG&E's wires have led to massive wildfires, hundreds of people dead, tens of thousands of homes incinerated, entire communities disrupted or destroyed. And what was PG&E's response to these wildfires? Ham-handed mass blackouts, putting millions of Californians into the dark. Now, while some of us may have the privilege and the luxury of viewing blackouts as something that you just have to endure, for many Californians, these blackouts are a matter of their lives. For the CalFresh recipient whose refrigerator goes out during a blackout and they lose all of their food, they can't afford to replace that food for the rest of the month. For the small business owner operating on a razor-thin margin, shutting down for 4 or 5 days or a week is a difference between surviving or not surviving. For the parent trying to support their family, not being able to go to work and not getting paid because your job site is shut down, or having to stay home because your kid's school has no power, that is a huge hardship. And for the person who relies on life-saving medical equipment being plugged in, such as a respirator or refrigerated medicine, a blackout can be the difference between life and death. And for all of this, wildfires, blackouts, a total lack of accountability for this company, what do we get? Some of the highest electric rates in the country. Given this terrible situation with PG&E, we now have an opportunity to make real change, to try a new model. And that's what this legislation is about, public ownership of PG&E. I want to mention a few things about the legislation, and I see we have some folks from IBEW 1245 here. Welcome. We look forward to working with IBEW. This legislation, as you will see, contains language protecting PG&E's workers.
How are you going to do that?
This transition, This transition must make PG&E's workers whole, and that is a priority.
That's a lie.
And so as a result, PG&E's unionized workers will transition over to the new entity. The collective bargaining agreements will transition over, benefits, wages, retirement. These workers have been doing their jobs under the worst of circumstances, and they must be protected, and they will be. The legislation also requires a high level of transparency for the new company. The entity will be subject to Californians' open records and open meetings laws with a much higher degree of transparency than today. In addition, as a public tax-exempt entity, the new utility will be able to access cheaper financing rates to rebuild the system, and will be able to focus on safety and ratepayers instead of Wall Street. We have strong models of successful public power in Northern California, including in Sacramento and elsewhere. We're at a turning point, and we have an opportunity to create positive change. And that is what this is about. So we have a number of speakers here today, and first, on behalf of Mayor Breed, I want to ask up Tyrone Jew. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. I think what's clear is that Senator Wiener has consistently demonstrated a leadership up in the state to tackle challenging issues to move our state in the right direction. Today, I'm pleased to be here on behalf of Mayor Breed as he takes another step in his advancement of improving the state by offering an approach to reform PG&E and put power back into the public's hands. Senator Wiener has been a strong ally in San Francisco's efforts to acquire local electric assets from PG&E, and Mayor Breed supports this proposal to have California take over all PG&E, as his bill will protect the rights of local jurisdictions to create a publicly owned utility. What both our efforts really come down to is one simple truth. The status quo with PG&E is no longer working in the best interest of the public, and that major change is needed. We've heard it from city mayors, we've heard it from state legislators, we've heard it from the governor. And I'm pleased to be here joined by our elected officials here in San Francisco to offer our support, Mayor Breed's support, for this bill as it moves forward.
Fix the homeless issue! The feces in the streets! Fix the roads! You guys got bigger issues!
Okay, we're joined by two members of the Board of Supervisors. I'd like to call up Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Mandelman. I'm sorry. First, I'd like to call up the President of the Board of Supervisors, Norman Yee. I apologize, I didn't see you over there. Followed by two of our great leaders, Supervisor Peskin and Supervisor Mandelman.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. You're absolutely correct. The system's broken. The status quo is not working for San Francisco. It's not working for a lot of places. This is one of the reasons why we publicly have been talking in the city about owning our own power system, because of what PG&E is doing to not only to our residents, but to all the other buildings in San Francisco. And one of the things we need to do is make this public, make the system work for us. And I want to tell you this right now, Senator Wiener, as soon as you introduce your legislation on this, we will, my colleagues and I will introduce a resolution to be supporting this. So thank you very much for taking a brave stance.
Do we get to vote on this?
Thank you, Senator Wiener, and thank you for your acknowledgement that the legislation being supported by the governor and by Senator Wiener in no way impedes the existing powers that the city and county has and is pursuing to acquire PG&E and municipalize locally. I want to say that this is a dream, a long time in coming. For 20 years, the leaders and people in the city and county of San Francisco have been looking forward to public power Now it has become a statewide issue, and those of us who were at the forefront 20 years ago have clearly been vindicated. It was considered to be a radical notion. It has become mainstream. Thank you, Senator Wiener.
You can't even maintain
Voters
that
don't want it. What's your...
Raphael Mandelman, I'm the supervisor for District 8, and I am just here to express my gratitude to Senator Wiener for your leadership on this at the state level, and to Supervisor Peskin here locally, who has been calling for municipalization at the local level for a long time. Thank you, Supervisor Peskin.
Let the people vote.
Now it's my pleasure to bring up the former president of the California Public Utilities Commission, Loretta Lynch.
Thank you, Senator Wiener. For far too long, PG&E has operated as a rogue corporation, placing profits over safety, profits over service, and profits over its customers, and profits over its workers. When they spent $300 million to cut its workforce.
You should have did your job when you were in office. Stop lying. So now you want to put accountability everywhere else. Do your job, California.
PG&E spent $300 million to try to cut its workforce.
You were supposed to do your job.
PG&E's criminal actions and failure to keep California safe mean that it should no longer be allowed the privilege of operating Northern California's power system. I applaud Senator Wiener's leadership in protecting Northern Californians and the California economy by introducing legislation to convert PG&E into a public power program. Public power will put people, not profits, first. Public power will make the electric system safe and reliable.
No checks and balances. You're going to watch yourselves? What a joke.
Safe, reliable, clean electricity delivered by well-trained workers who should not be in fear that PG&E will cut their jobs.
It's been getting worse and worse.
And Senator Wiener's proposal advances the ball to achieve
39
that
years in
goal.
this city, and it's only
Congratulations, Senator
getting
Wiener.
worse. When our tourists don't come,
Thank you.
when the conventions don't
We
come,
have now
make sure you
several
mention it's your
representatives
reason.
of our Bay Area Community Choice aggregators, and I'd like to call up, we have Jan Pepper from Peninsula Clean Energy, Don Weiss from MCE, and Dan Carson from Valley Clean Energy.
Stop boosting your political campaign.
Thank you all for coming today. I'm Jan Pepper, the CEO of Peninsula Clean Energy, San Mateo County's local energy provider. We provide cleaner and greener electricity at lower rates than PG&E previously did. PG&E still delivers the power over their lines, but we buy the power from solar, wind, and other clean energy sources. Agencies like ours are not for profit. Our ratepayers, customers, and quote shareholders are one and the same, namely the public. We are accountable to the public through our locally elected board of directors. We put our customers first because if we do not, our board members are going to hear from their constituents. I have worked in the utility and electric business for over 30 years. This is the second bankruptcy of PG&E that I've experienced during this time. From my perspective, we need to take this opportunity to ensure major reforms to PG&E. With hedge funds proposing to be the new owners of PG&E, their focus will be on maximizing profits and more of the same. Higher rates and more excuses. Neither outcome is good for Northern Californians. This is our opportunity to significantly change the model. A public customer ownership of PG&E will increase transparency, lower rates by allowing PG&E to access a lower cost of capital, and remove the need for PG&E to put profits ahead of service. First, public agencies like ours and municipal utilities are subject to transparency rules where our books are open, we conduct public meetings, and we are accountable to our customers. Second, public agencies can raise money in the capital markets at a much lower interest rate than for-profit companies. Lower interest rates translate directly into substantial savings as infrastructure costs billions of dollars per year. We all know PG&E need to spend more money to make its system safer. So how does that make sense possible on their capital? And third, by removing the need for PG&E to put short-term profits to boost their stock price ahead of lower rates and increased safety, we can ensure customers are moved to the front of the line. Community choice energy programs have shown that we can source cleaner and greener electricity at lower prices. A new PG&E should focus specifically on the safety of its infrastructure and exit the energy procurement business as well. And opportunities is not like this does not present itself every day. It is incumbent upon us that the public customer ownership model be immediately and seriously considered as the outcome for
We pay our bills too. We pay our taxes.
Next, I'd like to welcome up
Safety now!
Joyce
Safety now!
Sterling from Wiener Wiener, who's also the chair of the California Democratic Party Rural Caucus.
Safety now! Safety now! Safety now!
Thank you very much. Yes, safety now. I am standing before you as a grape grower with a family winery in Sonoma County. It happens that wildfire season coincides with our harvest, and rolling blackouts affect us so tremendously. The grapes don't wait to be ready to go into the press. We need power. It is a tremendous business cost, and more importantly, the impact on our employees is so incredibly concerning. We are all in this together. I also want to mention, as chair of the Rural Caucus of the Democratic Party, that one of the key issues is that if pieces of PG&E are spun off, to please remember that the assets are concentrated in urban areas, and too often in these kinds of reorganizations, our rural communities are left without any assets.
Before we get to our last speaker, I just want to acknowledge from the San Francisco Public Utility Commission, Harlan Kelly, as well as a few other great advocates in the community, Victor Olivieri, Kristen Asado-Webb, Bifid Brackett, Mick Del Rosario, and Nima Rahimi. Finally, I would like to welcome up our last speaker, Richard Scaff, one of our great disability justice advocates.
Senator, thank you. I'm here from Sonoma County. I spent 15 years working for the city of San Francisco under 5 mayors. I watched a public entity operate a public works water system and sewage system, and it was exemplary. We need to take the profit margin out of public utilities and make them true public utilities that actually serve us. I am here as an almost 76-year-old and a person with a disability. There are almost 20% of our population in California people with disabilities. We wake up in the morning hoping that PG&E won't turn off the power. I went to the first public training that PG&E put on about what to do, what they were going to do for us and for the general public. They had 4 slides. Mr. Johnson said, the first thing we will do is make a robocall. The person doesn't answer, we'll make a live call. Person doesn't answer, we'll send a live pilot light person out. And I stopped Mr. Johnson, I said, do you mind telling me if that person has any specialized training? He said, oh no, but they meet with the public all the time. I said, okay. And then the 4th step, if nobody answers the door, and we're talking about people with disabilities that may be in their home, their apartment by themselves because their attendant hasn't shown up yet, in bed, unable to get to the door. Do you know what PG&E is going to do? Leave a door hanger on the door, letting us know that they were there. That's what they're going to do to protect us from de-energization. Not PSPS, not public safety power shutoffs. They're not for us. They're for the corporate executives. You should be concerned about that as employees. I support this change because I believe that Senator Wiener will protect you, and I will be there to make sure that happens. I believe you have rights, and I want your rights protected. But our rights need to be protected. Our lives need to be protected. 20% of the population with disabilities, and I don't know the numbers of seniors, but a lot of us. Don't let that happen to us. Thank you, Senator.
We serve those people, and SFP and PUC can't keep truck drivers.
Thank you, Richard. So I also just want to acknowledge from the general manager and past general manager of the South San Joaquin Irrigation District, Peter Reed-Kirk and Jeff Shields. Thank you, everyone, for being here today, and we will move forward. Thank you.
Hands off our pitches! Hands off our pitches! Run the DMV first!
Make sure you're safe. How will you protect our Constitution? How will you protect our passion?
關於今日立法嘅一啲內容，
Answer the question.
email 俾我哋。
Can't even maintain hedge hedging.